Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
Shohei Ohtani is off the market, so where do the Angels go from here? Did the trade deadline's first big domino just fall in Major League Baseball? And the NCAA is a joke for going after Jim Harbaugh. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. I'm Peter Bukowski, starting your day with the can't-miss stories and biggest debates in sports. You're Locked On Sports Today.
Searching all major sports. Found.
Let's start with the biggest story.
Now, what are baseball fans going to talk about? Shohei Ohtani has reportedly been pulled from the trade market, so we don't get to speculate about where he will end up, at least not before the deadline. We'll just have to wait until the offseason when we can again speculate where Shohei Ohtani will end up. I'm sure that is music to the ears of John Frisch from Locked On Angels, at least for the moment. It is music to your ears, that we do not have to talk about trade destinations. Why do you think this was the move that was ultimately made here for LA?
I think it has everything to do with Artie Moreno. I think it has everything to do with the loss of revenue that comes with losing Shohei Ohtani. He doesn't want to be the one to trade Ohtani. He wants to stake his reputation on being the one that kept Ohtani. But what would have been even better for Artie Moreno is if he was the owner who won with Ohtani. And he's got 2 months to make that happen. If you've got Ohtani on your team, this is your best chance of getting anywhere is with him on your team, and the closest they've been since 2014, the last time they made the playoffs.
My take on this a couple weeks ago was that if you have someone like Shohei Ohtani, you just have to do everything you can to try and keep him. And if you still do everything you can to try and keep him and he walks, at least your conscience is clear. Like you can't be getting into asset counting mode when you have a guy who is this incandescent. What is your position on this move and what you think the rational thing is to do out of all this, even if maybe your heart might say something different?
You know, I feel like I've mentioned this before, but the ideal scenario might have been you trade Ohtani, you get your prospects, he comes back next year, right? Yeah. You're in better shape than you were right now. My fear, Peter, has been all along, the minute you let him walk through that door and he goes to the Orioles or the Rays or maybe even the Dodgers, I know that they were on the no-no list for the Angels, but the minute Ohtani sees how good other teams have it in terms of their pitching labs and their analytics and the things that they can do to help starting pitching get even better, I think that's pretty appetizing to somebody like Shohei who constantly pushes himself to get better. I think that's a big fear that might have gone into this decision. The minute Shohei is gone and he sees how good other teams have it, that might put a, pump the brakes kind of thought into his head about coming back to the Angels. But you're right. You have to do everything in your power to get him to stay. And you have 2 more months of negotiations exclusively with Shohei Ohtani. Look, I think all indications are that he's going to go to free agency. He wants to test it. He deserves to test it. Why wouldn't you test it? But at least the Angels now have the opportunity to keep negotiating and see if they can make something happen before the end of the season.
Why is the easiest path forward not just give him all of the money? Let's just here's pick a number and we'll pay it.
Right. I mean, honestly, I think that probably has already been a conversation with the Angels. They've always said they are going to go over the luxury tax for the right player. And I think Shohei Ohtani is that right player. But I think there's a huge part of him that wants to test free agency just to see what's out there. And at the end of the day, I don't think Shohei Ohtani cares about the money. And that is going to throw everybody to the floor. But the truth is that winning, I think, is the most important thing. A winning culture is the most important thing. I mean, he turned down millions of dollars early on in his career by staying in Japan and not coming over to the United States at a later age when he could have signed as a free agent. So he came over here to the U.S., got a minor league deal with the Angels. And I think that just goes to show where the emphasis lies for Shohei Ohtani. I don't think it's going to be money. I think it's going to be, how can you get me to the playoffs? What kind of culture do you have? and how can we win together?
Stay up to date all year on the LA Angels by subscribing to Locked On Sports today and Locked On Angels on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Thanks for making Locked On Sports today your first listen. Coming up, will a major move from a wild card hopeful kick off a wave of trades in Major League Baseball? Before we get to all of that, Aaron Rodgers is giving back to the Jets. Take your first swing at betting Major League Baseball on FanDuel and get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets up to $200. That's right, just bet $20 and you'll land $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. That's $200 you can spend betting everything from the money line to the point total to who you think is going to hit the first home run. The Cubs and the Cardinals face off in St. Louis. FanDuel has tonight's matchup pretty close, but the Cubs as slight favorites, Chicago minus 110 on the money line. Of course, you can also combine multiple prop bets in a single game for a bigger payout with FanDuel Same Game Parlay, all on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. There's no better place to bet on Major League Baseball than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So sign up today and visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get up to $200 back in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball. Aaron Rodgers is taking less, and not just taking less, signing a new deal that would pay him $30+ million less than he was otherwise owed to help out the New York Jets. Something, if I were petty, I would point out he never did in Green Bay with the Packers. John Butchko, not petty, joins me now from Locked On Jets. I think more importantly was the sound we heard from Aaron Rodgers off the top. And that was about this not being a one and done situation in Green Bay for Aaron Rodgers. What stands out to you about this to you?
He also threw in a caveat that it depends on how the year goes. It depends on how he feels. And I think it's fair. I don't think that there's any NFL player who's 39 years old who can tell you with 100% certainty what they're going to do a year from now. I mean, you may remember it was a few months ago, Aaron Rodgers said that back when he was going into the darkness that he was leaning towards retirement. But I think as much as anything, I kind of had this concern. How invested was Aaron Rodgers with the Jets? I mean, was it just a case where he wanted to collect another paycheck? And I think the fact that he left $35 million on the table, that to me says that he's all in with this team. You know, it's over 2 years. And look, I don't want to cry for Aaron Rodgers. He's still going to have an annual salary of $37.5 million, but I don't care how much money you've made through your career. Give him back $35 million to try and help your team. I mean, I think that speaks volumes for his views on what he wants this thing to be. And I think it's clear he's all in.
Colts owner Jim Irsay does not seem interested in rethinking the NFL's approach to handling running backs amid protests by elite players at the position over their contract negotiations. Irsay posted on social media Wednesday, "We have negotiated a CBA that took years of effort and hard work and compromise in good faith by both sides. To say now that a specific player category wants another negotiation after the fact is inappropriate. Some agents are selling bad faith." Running backs who are assigned the franchise tag are slotted for a 1-year salary that is less than any other truly positional player. In fact, only kickers and punters receive less via the franchise tag. You may remember that Jonathan Taylor plays for the Colts being the team that Jim Irsay owns. Seems like there's maybe a relationship there. The Cleveland Guardians got a win on the field against the Kansas City Royals and made a trade for a currently injured pitcher.
Busy and eventful day Wednesday in Cleveland in terms of baseball. Guardians able to finish off a series win against the Kansas City Royals thanks to the offense 8-3. I'm Justin Ladicos of Locked On Guardians. Guardians moved to 2 games back in the division thanks to Seattle being able to hold off the Twins for the second straight day. Guardians win their 3rd straight series in a row for the first time all year. They head into Chicago to face a beat-up White Sox team to hope to gain ground in the division, as the Twins will play host to the Kansas City Royals this weekend. And the bigger news, the Guardians moved on from Ahmed Rosario at shortstop. They traded him to the Los Angeles Dodgers on Wednesday. In return, they get right-hander Noah Syndergaard, currently on the injured list, former Ahmed Rosario teammate in New York. Very bizarre trade, but an active day. We'll see what that means for the Guardians on the trade deadline market in the next week and how they will fill shortstop in the rest of the season between their prospects and some other young players. Tune into Locked On Guardians all week to hear more.
The Rays request that they be woken up when July ends after a big loss to the Marlins.
A horrible July continues for the Tampa Bay Rays. My name is Ulysses Zambrano, host of the Locked On Rays podcast. 5-15 this month. Everything that can go wrong goes wrong. Efron only goes 4 innings against the Marlins. He got shellacked. Apparently left because of a left knee contusion or discomfort, and they're awaiting MRI results. He actually didn't stay at the Trop for the postgame. He left immediately to get that MRI. Hopefully that's nothing to be concerned about, but obviously with Drew Rasmussen and Jeffrey Springs already lost for the season, you gotta keep your good vibes out there for Zac Efron to not be hurt and to not be missing much more time. For this and much more about your Tampa Bay Rays, check us out on any podcast platform, especially on YouTube. Locked On Rays, Rays up.
If the LA Angels want to try and build a winner around Shohei Ohtani, they made a move last night to try and do it, which might signal another team with other assets potentially to give could be open for business. It's Lucas Giolito and Reynaldo Lopez headed to the city of Angels from Chicago. Our pal Sully from Locked On Major League Baseball joins me now. And Sully, this feels like the first domino to fall in what could be an eventful trade market.
As a proud member of Cal State Fullerton, let me just say he's not going to the City of Angels. He's going to Orange County. Okay.
I'm sorry.
There you go. I mean, let's first of all get down to brass tacks. I was talking to our mutual friend Jeff Carr of Locked On Reds about this. I saw the announcement that the Angels were not going to trade Shohei Ohtani, and I just said, "Yeah, right." And I thought it was a bluff. Like, okay, no, we're totally not going to trade Ohtani, and then trying to pry away Jackson Holiday away from Baltimore. But I have to say, if they're bluffing, this is quite a bluff. And we're also going to trade 2 apparently decent prospects to Chicago to bring in Giolito and to bring in Lopez. I think there's a lot of things going on here, and I don't think you can analyze this trade simply from a ball player for ball player situation. It's not just a Stratomatic trade. This is not just a fantasy baseball trade. There's a lot of other moving parts, and I've already seen a couple of people saying, like, they gave up too much for Giolito and for Lopez. It's like, that's not just what's going on here. Yes, in a vacuum, it probably is, but we do not live in vacuums. We live in Orange County. And this is a critical juncture in the history of the Angels franchise to try to convince the second generational talent that has fallen into their laps to not skedaddle and to say, we are going to make an effort. We promise you. This is the equivalent of the guy who realized his wife was really mad at him, and he went, the only place open is a deli where they sell those flowers outside, and he's running home to give her deli flowers, saying, let's make it work. Let's make it work. I got you, Giolito. I got you, Lopez. We can make it work. And I think that's what's going on here. And it's to say, not only not going to trade him, but we're going to get the player that a lot of people have been wanting to get, as he's been linked to Los Angeles, the actual team that plays in Los Angeles, or he's been linked to this team, to that team. And now he's going to go to the Angels, who, as of this recording, are in third place for the third wild card place. But that's them saying, folks, get on board. If we have to thumb and Louise this, we're going to thumb and Louise this, but we're hitting the gas and we're driving forward. And I kind of admire there's a little bit of too little too late maybe going on with the Angels, but they're like, oh my God, are we really going to lose not just this player, but these massive streams of income and revenue to the team? Yes, there's who are the names of the prospects? Who I wouldn't recognize if they walked in my house right now in full uniform.
It's left-hander Kai Bush and Edgar Carroll.
Okay, the law firm of Bush and Carroll got sent to the Chicago White Sox, and I wish them all the best of luck. Maybe there'll be a combination of Jeff Bagwell and John Smoltz in terms of deadline deal prospects who turn into Hall of Famers. chances of they're more likely than being the next Matt Laporta and Kyle Drabeck. That being said, yeah, all the best to you. But do you know what? There is no way that if those players made it to the major leagues, that any major Japanese corporation will be buying up billboards and ad space when they have their at-bats. There's no way that people are going to be traveling from all over the world waving flags to see them play. And so the Angels are realizing, God, this could really happen. And they had to do the proverbial activity or get off the pot, because if they didn't trade him now, then, you know, I mean, they really had two real options. And I think they should do option one at this point, which is just call up, he's Boris, right? Boris holds the keys, right? To say, what's it going to take? Everyone has a number. Tell me your number. And then whatever number they say, hand over that check, because it'll be worth every penny.
Follow all the moves at Major League Baseball's trade deadline by following and subscribing to Locked On Sports today. And of course, Locked On MLB, wherever you get podcasts. Coming up, we look at the latest reason why the NCAA is a joke. A recruiting investigation completed. Level 1 violations found. And what does this all mean for the NCAA? Why on earth did they spend all these resources to suspend Jim Harbaugh for 4 games that his team can probably sleepwalk through anyway? Locked On Wolverines host Isaiah Hull finds all this ridiculous.
They would have been better off just handing whatever recruits were there just a bag of cash when they went to the Brown Jug rather than buying them a hamburger. It's absolutely absurd. 4 games for that, right? Meanwhile, Tennessee's out there being like, hey, I guess you can take a couple scholarships. I mean, that's a big fine, essentially. But man, is that just weak compared to what Tennessee was doing under Jeremy Pruitt. And it was obvious, right? They were blatantly cheating SMU style from what it kind of seems like. And yet Jim Harbaugh is getting chastised to the nth degree for buying a hamburger. Now, it was just like with Jim Tressel. It wasn't the crime. It was the cover up of the crime. But here's how I look at that. The NCAA is out there acting like they have like they're Sandra Bullock from Bird Box, right? They can't see anything that's happening at other programs that are obviously doing some stuff, right? They're just out there like there's nothing to see here. Officer Bar Brady, nothing to see here. Yet when it comes to this thing with Michigan, you knew that how this was gonna go down. So yes, Jim Harbaugh, he claimed that he didn't really remember or whatever. But the truth of the matter is if he would have been forthcoming and been like, yeah, I bought that, then they would have come down just as hard. Like, you admit it.
On some level, I understand the outrage. College sports fan, indignant that college coach was punished for doing a thing all college coaches do. We know these recruiting violations are commonplace. They have been for decades. So I get it when people are annoyed by them. But that's why we have rules. And there were things done clearly wrong, clearly violations of the conduct that is expected of these coaches. And it probably matters that Jim Harbaugh is Jim Harbaugh. It matters that Michigan is Michigan. And in a lot of ways, if you're a fan of that school, you want your coach held to a higher standard. You are holding your coach to a higher standard. You believe you are a special institution. You're a blue blood college football program. You have to hold yourself to a higher standard. When they go low, we go high. That's supposed to be how this works, except no college football fan feels that way, really. They just want to win at all costs. And that's been true, again, for decades. So either let's just throw the book out, or let's stop worrying about the punishment of being 4 games or 2 games or none games. This is basically a none game suspension. because it doesn't matter if he's going to coach for Michigan for these 4 games. And it's not going to tarnish his legacy, let's be honest. And he's not getting fired. So this is just a nothing burger that Jim Harbaugh would have with a glass of milk. And finally, the R&A and the United States Golf Association proposed a modified local rule that would mandate the type of golf ball a professional golfer could use in a tournament. The new type of golf ball would travel up to 14 or 15 yards less than the current golf ball when hit by the longest hitters with the fastest club head speed. Jay Monahan said, nah. Although there have been some level of support for limiting future increases, he said there is widespread and significant belief the proposed modified local rule is not warranted and not in the best interest of the game. Good to see Monahan finally putting his foot down on something. Thanks for making Locked On Sports today your first listen. Now go find your favorite team's Locked On podcast and make them your second listen. Coming up tomorrow, now that Ohtani is off the market, who is the biggest fish in the MLB Trade Deadline C? So at least until tomorrow, stay Locked On Sports today.
Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
For more episodes of Locked On Sports Today, go to our video on demand. Click on Sports at the top of your screen. There, you'll find past episodes of Locked On Sports Today, plus other Locked On shows on demand.